And welcome to Thrift Shop Biography. This is the one about Dennis Rodman. Thank you for listening. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
All right.
Yeah?
Yeah, I say with trepidation as we're heading down an ignorant sports route again, and I don't feel overly confident.
I mean, basketball of all things. It's an American sport as well. We didn't even grow up with this one.
It's true, although I have to admit, it's the only sport I've seen more than once live.
Where have you seen it live?
In my life. In America. I've been to a few games.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Did you enjoy it?
Love it. I love it. Right? Okay, because as a girl from Britain, we play netball, and it's the closest, basketball is the closest to that of any sport I've ever played.
But isn't it still really different?
Probably, but at least I understand the notion of defence and getting the ball to one end and sticking it in a,
hoop.
Yeah, it's essentially the same notion. They're just a lot taller than we were.
What position did you used to play in netball?
Idiot at the back. Didn't know what was going on. Always getting yelled abuse at from the PE teacher. That's what I was. Not very sporty. I was always picked last for the team.
Were you really?
Yeah.
That's so sad.
Yeah, but rightly so. I wouldn't have had me in the team.
Well, please know that there's nobody on this planet I'd rather be doing this podcast with.
Oh, I'm in your team. Hooray.
So.
How about you, though? Did you play netball at school?
No.
Boys don't play netball, do they?
Boys do cricket, I guess.
Were you in a mixed school? I
yeah.
didn't even know that. Did they divide it in boys play football and girls play netball? Or?
Yeah.
They literally did?
Yes.
Boys and girls,
segregation.
You didn't mix?
No, not
no
well.
Girls played football and no boys played netball.
I mean, you mixed in every other lesson, but when it came to sport, the boys did football and the girls did netball.
Well, there you go. It's amazing, that, isn't it? I wonder if it's mixed now. You'd hope so.
No, they wouldn't play against each other because they don't now professionally, do they?
No, they don't. That's true. Oh, yeah.
So, have we mentioned who we're reading this week yet?
Oh, no. Dennis Rodman.
Dennis Rodman.
Bad as I want to be.
Bad as he wants to be.
Yes, and the cover is spectacular.
Isn't it?
He's fully naked on a motorbike with some basketballs. And the back page, he's got his back to us with his ass out.
Yeah, completely naked.
He's a pretty spectacular specimen of a human, isn't he?
Said Madonna in particular, and we'll get onto that.
Yes.
That's why she wanted to... Yeah, he really is.
Yeah.
And a very good basketball player too.
Spectacular.
So what did you know about him before you found this book?
Well, actually, I did have an interest in him because I went to work in Alaska in 1994. It was right in the middle of Michael Jordan's comeback to the Chicago Bulls. I had no clue about basketball, never watched it, but it was this really exciting end of the season showdown. And the people I was staying with, they took me to bars to watch these games. And instantly, I was like, oh, I love that man. Who's that man? He's so exciting. He's so cool. His hair was leopard print. He had this amazing energy about him. And I was totally hooked on the game because of him. I got then magazines and put posters of him on my wall.
Oh, wow.
I was an adult, but I wanted him on my wall. And then I got completely involved. And I was always in the bar with the other team. I was the only one who, yes! And you're like, oh, I'm going to get killed. And they won. And, oh, my God. And Michael Jordan, oh, my God, he just came out of nowhere and went bash, 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 poof, like that. It's the most exciting sports I've ever seen.
Wow.
So it got me into it. And like you see in this book, he says, I totally got people into this game. I should be paid more. He might sound like a show-off if you weren't there. He's right. That all was true.
Mm-hmm.
Got me in. How about you? Anything?
I know him as that funny man who wears ladies' clothes and has got pink hair.
Ah.
So shall we get into it?
Shall we?
Dennis Rodman.
6'8". He ended up.
He ended up, it wasn't 6'8". He wasn't born 6'8", was he?
No.
I love his dad's name.
Philander.
Philander.
And he was a philanderer.
Yeah.
Appropriately named.
Is that actually a name?
Well, it is, yes.
No, but do you know any other Philanders?
No.
And his mum was called Shirley.
Yeah.
And they were in New Jersey. Dad went into the Air Force.
Yeah.
But he was hardly ever there, of course, because he's in the Air Force.
Yeah.
Shirley got a bit fed up. And when Dennis was 3, they moved to Dallas, Texas in the projects, a single-parent family. And he had 2 younger sisters, Deborah and Kim. And they're all separated by a year each.
Yeah.
There's a couple of stories about his younger life in the projects. But he doesn't dwell on that. He just kind of says it's tough, and mum was working 3 jobs, and most young black men in the projects end up dead or in jail. Or there is this way out via sports.
Yeah, or drug deals.
Stealing and dealing.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that when he was a kid, he was actually quite short.
Yeah.
And his 2 younger sisters were taller and really good at basketball.
Yeah, they were stars of their schools.
And he wasn't. He didn't even play at that point.
I know. It is unusual.
Yeah. But then, when he became an older teenager, I think he was like 19, he'd left school. Then all of a sudden, he grew 9 inches in 2 years. I mean, most people get their growth spurt before then. He was a late developer, wasn't he? And he said he went from 5'11" to 6'8" in 2 years. It's like rhubarb.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah,
weird.
It's
and he had this whole new body to get used to.
Yeah.
Like he says that when he was a kid, he really thought he would end up gay because he had all these women around him, only women basically, a mum and 2 sisters, and he was rejected by all the girls around him because they all said he was ugly and awkward, and he just probably thought he'd be gay, which is a very unusual thing, especially because he isn't now. So it's quite strange that he thought he would be. And he didn't lose his virginity until he was 20, when he was with a few mates, and they paid a prostitute $20 for all of them. Really
good
weird.
deal.
Do you know what? Firstly, that's very cheap. Yeah. Secondly, 20. It's unusual for... He is an unusual person. This is an unusual...
Oh, sorry, you mean he was 20. I was still stuck on $20.
20, I'm 20.
Yeah, it is like... But the thing that I do get from this book is that he was incredibly awkward as a child. He was incredibly shy. He was also really gawky and ugly by everybody else's opinion. So, yeah, I understand that he's not going to get laid, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but 20's late.
For a man such as himself now and his public image, it's weird to think that guy didn't lose his virginity until he was 20.
I have to say, he's just... You've got to admire him for his honesty. He doesn't have to tell anyone that. He's so honest and open about himself, and I think there's going to be a lot of people who read this that are just so relieved that they're not alone, especially as a black sports person or just a black man, because it's just nobody in that community ever comes out and says anything truthful like this. It's not done. I couldn't name another person.
No, and I also had to keep reminding myself that this book was actually out 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So actually, it's not just that he's saying this stuff now as we're reading it. He was saying this stuff a long time ago when people thought very differently. And actually, when you think that he did have these piercings, he dyed his hair, wore women's clothes sometimes, that was really radical in sport.
Yeah, and sports, yeah. No, I really admire him for all of that, and just for being there for anyone who's odd with his background, so that they're not alone.
Do you know what I didn't expect? I didn't expect to like him as much as I do reading this book. And I think that's a bit presumptuous on my part because he does look like a punk. I guess if you just see him, just think he's probably a bit arrogant and stuff, but actually he's really sensitive and considerate.
He is.
Yeah.
And of course there's an arrogance because you have to have it to be a top sports person. There's so many contradictions with him. You know what? Arrogant one minute, totally vulnerable another. He's all over the shop, and you just mainly sort of worry about him. I do. He's been through so much and he's so conflicted and he's quite troubled, really, isn't he? You can tell. Also, another thing that he comes back to a lot, and I think he's using it as a bit of a metaphor, but there was a state fair that came to town and it was about 5 miles away. Because they couldn't afford to get in, they went along the sewage tunnels. And it was about 5 miles of sewage tunnels where you were literally in the shit and then coming up through a manhole in the middle of this fair smelling of shit. But he said it's kind of fun, but he always comes back to that. He's like, I could be back in a tunnel of shit, or I could be an NBA star. That's his sort of metaphor of where he comes from. And a metaphor for his journey to the NBA, because he certainly came the hard way. He wasn't one of the chosen ones from college that was groomed from an early age. Exactly. And that's one of his big conflicts, I think, later on. He's supposed to be this big star, and he's still the kid in the sewage tunnel, and what's it called when you feel like you're an imposter? Imposter syndrome. I think a lot of people have it. His sits right on his sleeve. Anyway, that's just to round up his childhood.
Then at the age of 19, 20, he gets a job at Dallas Airport being a janitor on the graveyard shift, just pushing a broom. So he says he's getting $6.50 an hour, which is a reasonable wage.
1981?
And that's his life. Yeah. I mean, we've all done it. We've all had those boring jobs, and that's what he's doing while he's figuring out what he's going to do with the rest of his life.
Yeah, actually, at an airport, it'd be quite less bother than some busy cafe kitchen job.
He does say that he's also doing a bit of petty theft from the concession stores, but one night he gets a bit carried away and he realises if he pushes his broom handle through the grill of a watch shop, he can hook all of the watches off, and he steals 50 watches in one night.
Which is really daft because there's cameras in an airport.
Yeah, but he's only caught after he's given them all away.
Yeah.
This is the thing, you know what? He's not stealing those watches for profit. He's not selling them. He's giving them to friends and family. Anybody that wants a watch can have one. And I think it's just, he wanted to be elevated in their eyes. He just wanted to be somebody a bit special. So it wasn't like necessarily a crime to make money.
Yeah, and when they came to investigate, they went round the neighbourhood. He said, I've just given them all away. And they went round and got every single one back.
But that was lucky for him because he only spent a night in jail. If they hadn't been able to get the watches back, he'd have been probably 6 months in jail.
Yeah.
So they kind of, I think, cut him a bit of slack there, actually. He must have been a good kid, I guess.
I thought that. They must have thought, this is just not normal behaviour. He deserves a break.
And he's already 20 at this point. So I think he's probably established himself as a quiet, good kid.
I would have thought that.
Yeah.
He says at this point, I always believed there was something in store for Dennis Rodman. It's that self-belief. You've got to have it.
You do have
like someone said something better than this is going to happen to me. Not everybody ever thinks that.
He's playing basketball at this point, and he says he's beginning to take it a bit seriously. Of course, his sisters are already established in basketball, and he's playing at a local gym with his friends, just having a knockabout. And this woman called Loretta Westbrook, who's a friend of the family, is watching him play and thinking, oh, God, he's actually really good. And, of course, he's shot up to 6'8".
Yeah, he's got this whole new body he's trying to test out.
So she encourages him to apply for Cook County Junior College via a basketball scholarship. And he goes and tries out, and obviously they want him. So he's out of pushing a broom at the airport and he's into Cook County Junior College. But it means going to college. You can have a sports scholarship, but you still have to go and do the classes. And he's no good and he's bored and he doesn't want to do them. So quite soon he leaves. And then he's just back
at his mum's.
Yeah.
Hanging out, and he's hanging out with drug dealers, a bit of more petty theft. He's on a fast road to nowhere.
Yeah, and he says that he kind of makes himself homeless. He says his mum never asked him to leave, but he was really aware that she was working hard and didn't have much money.
Yeah.
And he didn't have a job. So he just went into this period of sofa surfing or just walking around the streets at night, just like really opting out.
Imagine how much feeding it would take. If you're 6'8" and muscles, we all know from Arnie how much food you need. Meat. You need meat. So yeah, we'd have eaten her out of house and home. So he just left.
But what was interesting about that is one day when he's at his mum's, there's a knock at the door, and it was basketball coaches from another college who had seen him play at Cook County in a tournament. Obviously, they kept an eye on him, probably wondered where he got to.
Yeah.
And they'd been trying to ring his mum, but he refused all of the calls because he didn't want to go back to college.
No, he didn't.
He just wasn't interested. He didn't want that life. So they came to the house and knocked on the door, and he just happened to be there. And he says that he feels the universe was kind of looking out for him because these guys came and they convinced him to go to southeastern Oklahoma, where he would get another basketball scholarship. Yeah. And he went.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Because he always says, I am not the same story as every other basketball player, because all of them, it was their dream. And I'm probably the only one who it wasn't even my dream. And
it's quite late, I think, isn't it? For a professional sportsman. He's like 21 at this point.
Yeah, I'd have thought that.
I mean, he can play basketball, but he hasn't been playing for long.
No.
He's only been 6'8" for a couple of years.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and he's had no training. He's just playing.
So he goes to the Southeastern Oklahoma College.
And then it was after going to that college for a year, where he was the only black man, he had a lot of racist abuse, He really did suffer that.
Yeah, because he's all of a sudden not in the projects in the city
No.
anymore. He's in a town in Oklahoma with 6,000 people.
Yeah, and
he's
proper sort of go home, all that sort of stuff that he had to put up with. Anyway, he went on a summer camp and met this kid.
I love this.
I know, and he's only 22 years old. This kid's 13. And he says, I guess the kid sort of fell in love with me. You know, I guess it was that way around. He was like a mentor to this kid, but they needed each other because he was messed up in whatever way. He was lost, let's say. He was just a lost soul. This kid had shot his best friend by accident in a hunt.
It's so sad.
Gun, just so sad. So this poor 13-year-old has killed his best friend and is a total lost soul, and they find each other. This age disparity is actually really lovely, isn't it? Because you just think it doesn't matter what age you are, it's the souls needed each other.
Do you know what? I want a whole book about Dennis Rodman and his 13-year-old best friend, Bryn.
Yeah.
Bryn Rich, and they are best friends
for their whole lives, yeah. Absolutely best friends. Even when he goes to meet Madonna, he takes him. Yeah, it's really nice.
Of course, let's not lose sight of the fact that Bryn Rich is white and his family are white. They're farmers.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, this 6'8", 21-year-old black guy is suddenly best friends with their 13-year-old son.
Yes.
Eventually, he moves out of the halls of residence for the college and he moves in with the family on the farm.
And it's one of those, like, it's almost the story of dealing with racism and overcoming it, but just through a little micro lens of one family and one man. Because they both don't know the other and have to get used to each other to the point where their mother's driving all the back streets because she doesn't know what the neighbours will think if they see a black man in the car. And he doesn't know what white people are like. And they get used to each other and they absolutely find family in each other.
The dad, in particular, Bryn's dad, becomes like a father figure to Dennis because there's a farm. Dennis has to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to help with the cows and stuff. Sometimes Dennis says, I've had enough. I'm going back to the projects. And the dad is like, I'm never going to let you do that.
Yep.
So there was a real sense. I find it so bizarre, but I think those parents recognised that their poor, traumatised 13-year-old son
needed him.
Yeah.
Needed a big brother.
Yeah, and they just made it all work.
Yeah, they
somehow.
did. Anyway, it's just the making of him, actually.
I'm absolutely fascinated by this relationship and I want to know more.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Eventually, because he's so good at basketball and he's becoming a star on the college team, the community do accept him. And this is also a running theme in the book. It's kind of like, don't just accept me because I'm good at basketball. Yeah. You should be accepting me for who I am.
That's right. But yeah, there's a huge amount of race relationships throughout this whole book and identity about how you get accepted and how you're seen as a fully rounded person and all that. And like he says, that abuse continued and he was angry and he could easily have retaliated to any one of these people shouting at him from their cars and whatever. Yeah. But because that kid, Bryn, was almost everywhere, they went everywhere together. He said, Bryn stopped me. You know, he always stopped me from retaliating. It kept me on the straight and narrow.
So he's at southeastern Oklahoma for 3 years and he becomes a star on the college team and he wins, I don't know what this is, but he wins the NAIA All-American 3 years in a row. I'm guessing that means he's really good at basketball.
Let's say he's really good at basketball. But he knew he had to get trained. I guess that 3 years is what really honed his act.
Well, what actually happened is he is good, but when the NBA come looking, because at the end of the 3 years, there's a showcase for the really good guys that are coming out of college. And he goes along to this big showcase with all the star players from all the colleges. And he kicks everyone's ass. Yeah. So he knows that people are going to spot him. And the talent managers from the Detroit Pistons are there. And they like him, but they don't take him on as an immediate player. They take him on as an option of somebody they can train up over 2 years. So I think, he's like a really good player. He has the energy, he has the instinct, but I think they just need to kind of sand off his rough edges, which actually it turns out is something he struggles with throughout his basketball career. But he's spotted as a really good player.
But actually, I don't think he does sand off his rough edges. He just actually brings his rough edges to the game and changes the game.
But at that point, when they hire him...
they think they're going to try.
They think they're going to mold him
in. He's 25, yeah, you're right. It seems late to actually get a professional job in sports.
Well, he says Shaquille O'Neal, by the age of 20, when Dennis is sweeping up at the airport, Shaquille O'Neal's already so far into his career that he has his autobiography.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
So he was presumably playing basketball his entire life, Shaq.
Yeah.
And whereas Dennis Rodman wasn't at all. So it's amazing that he came through to be one of the most famous basketball players of all time.
Yeah.
Because I don't know basketball, but I know him. I know Shaq, I know Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson.
Yeah.
I could not name you another one.
Okay, so then, he signed to the Detroit Pistons. He said when he signed, he hyperventilated and they had to call a doctor.
Oh, my God.
Because he was just overwhelmed that this was happening to him, that this was real. It just really shows you how he felt. And he says he's totally emotional. That's part of his appeal, is because he keeps his emotion in the game. If he does an amazing shot, he might cry.
I honestly think that raw emotion goes a long way. Yeah, he said it was at a really crucial point in a game. Both teams are tied and there's 1 minute left. And the star player on the other team, Hakeem, somebody, leaps up to basically dunk the winning shot. And he's taller than Dennis. He's stronger than Dennis. But somehow Dennis just manages to get in there and slam the ball away, saving the game. Yeah. The crowd go mad. Dennis bursts into tears. It's that authenticity, isn't it?
Yes.
You can't cheat that. And people really begin to notice him. Yeah. You know what? You know Gaza? He was always a good football player, but there's lots of good football players. When he got sent off, Euro, not 96, 86,
yeah, he went like
remember.
A baby and no one will ever forget it.
He cried, and that made him our favourite football player. Do you know what? At the time, I worked in a workman's canteen, and all the lads came in, and they had T-shirts of Gaza crying. Not scoring a goal or anything, literally crying.
But as their hero.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not taking the piss.
No, he became iconic because he wept on the pitch, and that's what this is. You can't cheat that.
I know Dennis Rodman says that the NBA was kind of down and out before this revival of these stars came along, including him. But massively Michael Jordan started it, I'd say. They didn't even play those large arenas. They played much smaller centres. It wasn't televised. It wasn't the game it was. And people like Michael Jordan brought it up and he joined in with that. And they all took it to the next level. And then they end up playing these huge arenas. But it does get out of hand. He says it, and I thought it. When you go, right, and they play, it's so big you can be quite far away, and you're having a beer and watching it, and it's really cool. And then suddenly, you don't even understand what's going on. All these cheerleaders are suddenly there, and they're all jumping on each other's shoulders, and there's all this music, and you don't even notice the transition from the game stopping to that starting. And that goes on for 10, 15 minutes, and then the game's on, then it's off again, there's more cheerleaders everywhere, and mascots, and it is like a kind of circus. And he says that, he's like, it doesn't need it. There's so many advert breaks, but those are advert breaks when you're watching telly. But if you're there in person, it's just cheerleaders and circus. And it's very baffling. You just actually want to watch the game. Yeah. But there's so much money in it now. They put so many advert breaks on that it stops all the time.
Do you know what? I watched some clips when I was reading this book. Yeah. And it really annoyed me because when the game is going on, all right, they're not playing the deafening music, but there's cheerleaders on the side of the court and they have like tinsely pom-poms and they're moving them around. I'm kind of thinking that's so distracting for the player.
And he's saying the game is enough. The game is exciting. Why have you got... And I totally agree with him.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just watch the game. It's so exciting. It's so good.
I had no idea you really loved basketball watching it.
I don't, talk about it.
It's like a secret pleasure. What's interesting, when he was first taken on by the Detroit Pistons, is that he was on the bench a lot. They didn't use him. And he kind of got frustrated about that. And the way he became important as a player, he figured out that everybody on that court wants to score, wants to stick one in the hoop, right? So he made himself a valuable defensive player doing this thing called rebounding. Now, he talked about rebounding so much in this book. I looked up what it actually was, and I think I understand, it's basically if the ball is coming towards your hoop, you just have to get it away. So you're literally rebounding the ball back down the court. So if you look at his stats for playing a game, he's really mediocre in terms of scoring hoops and stuff. Yeah. That's not why he's on the court. He's on the court to play defensive play. And then 7 years in a row, he won best defensive player. So he's made himself a really important part of the team because everybody else wants to be the star who's getting in the hoops. I thought that was so clever to establish yourself as the best rebounder. I
know, it's really cool because that time when he was in the, what do you call it, the pit?
Oh, the bench, on the bench.
On the bench. So sporty. He actually honed his brain in that time, never mind the game. He watched it and saw there's a lot of people who weren't playing. They signed contracts, but they never play and then they're let go of. And he thought, I've got to make my mark. I've got to become so important they don't let me go. I've got this far. And that's how he worked out what he needs to do. But he is so good at it. To be the best in the whole of the NBA, 7 years in a row, is absolutely phenomenal.
That's his mentality because he didn't come the normal college route. It didn't come easy for him. He talks a lot about these top dog college players who don't have to work as hard to get promoted and stuff. He's always having to struggle to be the fact that he's left on the bench so often. But when he gets a chance to play, my God, he makes it happen, you know? So there's this real struggle. And even when he does become an important player, if anything goes wrong in the game, it's never these top dog players who get the blame. He seems to be the scapegoat a lot for when things go wrong. Yeah. But the Detroit Pistons, they're getting successful.
Him joining that team when they really realised his worth, because he said he wasn't actually that tall for a basketball player. I actually looked at the statistics. It's insane how tall they get. I can't remember, but it's ridiculous, like 8 foot or something. But anyway, at 6'8", he was actually one of the shorter ones. But he was very, very fast. He also said he could jump. It's not necessarily how high he could jump, but he could jump up and down really, really fast.
Like a pogo stick.
Yeah. And he said he trained. You know, he went to the gym all the time and worked on different muscles. And, you know, I mean, I'm sure they all do, but...
No, he says that when people accused him of taking drugs, I find this amazing. Yeah. At the time of writing this book, he never done so much as smoke a spliff, let alone take coke and stuff. And he said that when they were onto him and the press were onto him for taking drugs, he's like, it's just because of the way I look. I think the team were so worried about him, they hired a private detective to follow him. And he said that all that private detective would have seen is him going to the sports place 90 minutes before a game and working out, playing the game, and then going back in the gym for 90 minutes afterwards. He said no other player would do that. Yep. So he's worked so hard and committed.
That's why he's actually the best for 7 years in a row.
Yeah.
The best. Let's not underestimate that achievement. It's huge.
Do you know, he only really got given a proper chance in that team when another player hurt their ankle and was out for the season. And then they got him on the court and started using him. And of course, it paid off. Yeah. That team became hugely successful.
Yeah. He says he's judged because he had tattoos, he had piercings, and he talked shit. That's what he says, I quote him.
I think it also might be a class thing because it does sound like a lot of these players are coming from the privileged route through college.
He leads you to believe that, yeah.
Whereas
it's true.
Yeah, I don't know, because he did say at the beginning that one way out of the projects is via sport. So you would think more people were coming there from that.
Yeah, he dismisses everybody as these privileged people, black or white. And then, because there's a lot of contradictions in this, there's another time when he says race, got a chapter on race, and he actually says, black players know they can beat white players. And he said it isn't just like, he says you know in your soul, and you know you have to because it's that important. Mm-hmm. It's like a battle. You know, the white people rule hockey and all that, but black sport is more basketball. It's like you're representing your whole race, and it means everything that you can beat white people because you're representing, you know, you can understand it without having to spell it out. But that's what he says. So I kind of get why he has to win. Why I do get where it's coming from. He says, like, you've got drug dealing, jail, or basketball. There's so few avenues for black people for career opportunities, whereas a white man has the whole world to do any job you want. There's so many less, and that's why you have to win and have to be good. Mm-hmm. It makes sense. Hopefully this is changing, especially once there's been a black president. Hopefully the world is now seeing there's every job available to everybody. In the 90s, this is the 80s still. I'd like to hope that that's changed a little bit.
I think we'll have to get back to you on that.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to live in that world. I just don't think we're quite there yet, unfortunately.
But yeah, let's just hope that steps are being made.
So the Detroit Pistons basically make it big and they win, and there's a big parade through the city and the crowds are going crazy. So, Dennis Rodman on this team has been a huge positive, and they are actually getting somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably was down to other people as well.
No, he won the best rebounder with the Pistons 2 years in a run.
And do you know what else? He says that when some of these other top dog players are winning Player of the Year, he's like, they're only that good because I'm defending on their behalf so well. I'm the best rebounder. I make it easier for them.
They get the spotlight, but actually he gets it because he just can't go unnoticed.
Yeah.
He's a personality.
So he's kind of becoming a bit of a celebrity now. He's winning Defensive Player of the Year. And, did photograph in the book when he goes up to accept that award and he just starts crying again. It kind of means so much. He's so emotional. I love it. It really endears me to him, actually. He does come across as arrogant, but actually when his hard work is rewarded, it's just emotional and he cries in public. It's lovely.
Yeah, it's like I say, you have to be arrogant to a point.
Yeah.
You have to be to play sports like that.
So he has this new lifestyle and they go out as a team and stuff, and he's in a bar one night and he meets this nice lady called Annie.
Yeah, nice lady. I would say that he says that you're surrounded, as soon as you're signed to anyone, you're surrounded by women who are after you for money, essentially, and they use sex to get it. And she was one, I'd say. They hooked up a few times and in no time she's pregnant. And then it's money.
I thought she was very clever about it because she wasn't obvious at the beginning. Everything you've just said, I think, came to him in hindsight.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because at the time, she just kind of seemed quite cool about it. They wouldn't see each other all the time, but they managed to have sex a few times, enough for her to get pregnant.
And look, I think we've pretty much established that he wasn't innocent. He didn't think he was attractive to women. As soon as he signs up, he's got money and he's got women throwing themselves at him. But often he feels it makes him feel worthless to have had it come to him that easily, women. And he's very conflicted about it. It takes him a long time to work out what's real and what isn't. Mm-hmm. Then some of these women are boasting, I've had this player, I've had that player. And he's like, now you're going to be talking about me next. So it's really turning him off. Oh, yeah,
he says that when he's in bed with some of them, actually doing it, they will talk about how another player has done it.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? No. That is such a turn off.
And he's just not that person. So
they probably look at him and think he is.
Yeah, that's right. You would. It's amazing, isn't it? It's like in Arnie, it said all those bodybuilders are actually building their body as a sort of armour. And it's like he's doing it too. The tattoos, the piercings, it's an armour because then people will assume something about you and it protects you from having to explain who you really are. It'll be like that with him. Well, no, it is because he says it. Yeah. And he said actually that woman duping him and having that kid that he then absolutely loves and adores this kid. Yeah. And it really manipulates him emotionally. And he said it really put his guard up to all other women for the rest of his life, which...
Well, the thing about the kid, the daughter called Alexis that he's had with this woman called Annie, they stay in each other's lives. And then when Alexis is 4, she puts pressure on Daddy. He said, Daddy, can you marry Mummy? Why aren't my Daddy and Mummy married? Yeah. And then he does this whole paragraph that says, well, I don't think it's important to get married. I don't think you need to get married. And then the next sentence is, we got married in 1992.
For my kid, it was a massive mistake. They split up 82 days later.
82
but
days
by
later.
then, of course, she can rinse you because you've got the contract. She would have probably manipulated her kids to put
say
the pressure
that.
on.
Yeah, it crossed my mind when I read it.
Because, once you've got that contract, you've got the money. It's all rolling in.
Money as well. You know what? Like, he certainly views himself as an underdog throughout this whole book. Doesn't matter what situation he's in. And there's a constant battle, even when he's a star, with his team managers and stuff. Now, I thought this was an interesting point. So he's becoming somebody now, and he is a valuable asset to the Detroit Pistons. But he signed a 6-year, $10 million contract. So that was before the 1990 season. And then when they're signing new players, they're giving them more
like
money.
$8 million a year or something.
Yeah, but they won't renegotiate his because it was already signed and established.
And they keep promising him they will, and then not doing it year in, year out. So he's getting pissed off.
Yeah.
Because he also knows how much money he's making for them.
Yes.
Because he knows he's the draw. They're selling out like they never have before when he's playing. He's making them a mint. And so it's just comparative, really. If no one else was getting paid more, he wouldn't care. But they are getting paid massively more than him.
They are. No, he says this is the first time he realised he was a commodity rather than a person. People are making money out of him.
Yeah. And what's even worse is a lot of these players are real family men, and they all have these big get-togethers, and you've got to bring your wives and all that, and he just doesn't fit into that. But the endorsements, they've all got endorsements, and they're making 10 times the money on endorsements. Nobody wants Dennis Rodman to endorse their product because he's too much of a wild card.
He said that with sponsorship and endorsements, Michael Jordan was on $35 million a year. Shaq was on $25 million. Dennis was on $3 million. So the three biggest basketball players in the country, he is nowhere near what he should be earning.
Yeah, I mean, I get the endorsements thing. That's because of his choices. That's business. But the pay isn't. They should have been paying him more. He was trying to renegotiate for $7 million a year, which is still way less than the others are getting paid. And they kept fobbing him off. That must be the most annoying thing. Yes, we will do it. And they're not doing it.
Yeah. It's because he obviously plays basketball very well, but he doesn't play the game.
Yeah,
he does.
absolutely.
You know, he's not this wholesome sports guy.
That's right.
Whereas actually underneath it all, he kind of the most decent of them all, probably. Yeah. But he just doesn't look like that. He does talk about the first time he bleached his hair. And he said when he went out onto the court and revealed it, the crowd just loved it.
Yeah.
And then he became the focus of the shows. And he did become the reason people started turning up and were finding basketball exciting. And he wasn't getting... it's the music industry, isn't it? Yeah. The managers and the companies make the money. That's right. Exactly what's happening here.
Yeah. And people didn't have tattoos then. Beckham probably got tattoos because of Dennis Rodman.
Yeah, right.
You know, he was the first.
I found a lot of parallels with Beckham in this book, actually. Yeah, just how he was making them so much more money and how he was singled out. And if things were going wrong, he would get the blame.
The pop star girlfriend, they don't like it when you have a life outside and draw attention to anything else.
And like you say, they'd have barbecues at the weekend and they would all go, if they are going to play an away game, they'd all go to the hotel or out on the town together. Actually, Dennis Rodman wants to go off and see his friends. He doesn't want to hang
Vegas
out
and gamble.
with them.
He can make his own choices in life.
And he would be told that he's letting the team down because he's not socialising with them. And he says, because you've got a $10 million contract over 6 years, they think they own you 24/7. And he's like, no, you pay me to play basketball.
Yeah, and he always put 1,000% into the game. So you could never criticise him for that.
No.
Anyway, it's 93. And a lot of the players were dropping out of the Pistons for various reasons. So actually the team was in a decline. And he was in a decline because he divorced his wife. There's various reasons, a lot to do with not seeing his kid, all sorts. And he got really depressed. He's massively into Pearl Jam. I love how much he loves Pearl Jam. He bloody loves Pearl Jam. He relates to all their lyrics and everything. Anyway, he sat in his Jeep in the car park. He's got a shotgun and he's really, really, really about to kill himself. He's genuinely about to. And I think you can only have that epiphany and turn your life around when you actually really know that you can do it. And that's what happened, isn't it? So I know I can kill myself and I would and I will. But I, at that point, made a decision not to. But what I'm going to do is like real self-therapy, because a therapist would tell you this. He's like split himself in two and realised there was one Dennis Rodman that everyone imagined he was, and this pressure to be this person, this, ideal person for the press. And there was the real Dennis Rodman, who he really honestly knew he was. And so he killed the imposter in his mind and decided to be authentic. And he went out and painted his nails bright blue, dyed his hair leopard print, and he wore halter necks and went to gay bars and realised he just had to be a fully rounded, three-dimensional person and not a sports icon. And it saved him. It saved him from depression, being himself, taking all the knocks, never getting an endorsement. But he had to be true to himself. I flipping applaud that. I massively applaud that.
I think I hate the word brave. I think it's overused. But certainly in 1991 or whenever, in a male-dominated sport as a black man, to just all of a sudden be this kind of flamboyant character wearing...
I have to say, a white man would have the same... I don't think there is one that's ever been that brave.
Fair enough, yeah. Yeah, it's astonishing. And also, another thing that just made me think he's an amazing human being is within that arena to have an age ribbon shaved into the back of your head.
Of course, people thought he was gay anyway.
Yeah.
People thought he was on drugs. People thought he was crazy. And he took all that on board. He didn't care. He knew they'd think that, and they did.
And you know, actually, when Magic Johnson did contract HIV and he came back onto the court, there was a lot of opposition. And Dennis Rodman's like, right, I'm going to give that guy hell during this game. And he battered him back and he slammed his body and he hugged him and stuff. And Magic Johnson was just like, wow, that was the best thing anybody could have done to help me get back out there. Yeah, he really is a brilliant human being, actually Dennis Rodman.
Yeah. I know.
Oh, apart from, I'm sure the woman sat on the front row when he bashed into her and knocked her teeth out might have something different to say.
Yeah, but then he's like, she sued me and she got her whole mouth done. I'd only bashed a few teeth out.
I know. He says, I had to pay her $60,000, but she also got a whole new denture plate at the same time. Some people take advantage. It's like, all right, you did knock her teeth out. Let her get a whole new denture plate. It's kind of fine.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
She says she'd never been to a basketball game before, so she didn't know what to expect on the front row. No, honestly, if I was sat on the front row, I wouldn't have expect to get my teeth knocked
would you
out.
not?
Would you?
Well, I would now. Anyway, about a year after he realised he had to be himself and was himself, of course that attracted Madonna's attention, because that's the sort of person she sees, and she's not just seeing the surface, I realise she is seeing the person behind what that is. She gets it, because she can probably see herself in it.
Yeah.
And actually, this is the most endearing account of Madonna I've ever read.
It's like a different person.
Yeah, it really is. It's like the person behind the facade.
Yeah.
Although her brother reveals the person behind the facade as a terrible person.
She's not trying to woo her brother, is she?
Oh, she doesn't want her brother's babies.
Yeah. No,
Big difference. You could be right. She wanted something out of him.
Yeah, she definitely had spotted Dennis Rodman as a potential father for the child she deeply craved.
Yes.
What I love about this, though, you're so right. This whole chapter about Madonna, I was waiting for him to say, oh, well, she turned out to be a massive bitch. No, didn't come. It's lovely. And in fact, the chapter titled Madonna has a subtitle, and it's an old-fashioned tale of romance.
Right.
And that's exactly what it is.
It's the only chapter in this book of any love. It's the truest love. To the point where he still says he wants to try again.
Yeah.
He'd take her back and try and make it work.
What's incredible, when you think about the public persona of Dennis Rodman, when you think about the public persona of Madonna, how sexually charged both of those people are, actually how controversial they both are, how they both have reputations actually of being a bit confronting and a bit of a bitch, to actually read the both of them coming together and just having the most beautiful, loving relationship.
Yeah, and actually really isn't about any of that stuff. It's like you peel away all those layers and the truth is just two ordinary people. And both of them, because he keeps saying, I can't understand how I'm in this situation. How can Madonna want me? I'm only me. And you think, can't you see that Madonna also would be feeling that? She's an ordinary person that became Madonna, the same as him. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a bit sad how he struggles so hard to see that she's just a person same as him.
Well, you know what? I guess she'd been so much more famous for so much longer. And maybe, like you said, he probably does have imposter syndrome, whereas she was probably over hers a long time ago.
If she ever had it, actually. And she probably doesn't. But there's still a humanity there.
Yeah. I love that she went on TV, didn't she, and says, I think Dennis Rodman is cool as shit or something.
Yeah.
And then she wangled an interview with Vibe magazine. She wanted to interview Dennis Rodman for Vibe magazine, which is Quincy Jones's magazine.
Yes, it is.
And she invited him to her house And he got his little friend Bryn to come because you would, because that's so exciting to go to Madonna's house. And
honestly, I wangled an interview in my house.
Yeah. Yeah, she knew what she was up to.
She knew. She went after it.
Yeah, they go out for the evening, and then when they go back to the house, she says, "You're sleeping with me."
Oh, well, because the photographer was there after the interview, and he said they were all over each other. Those pictures are famous. It was a build-up right there, wasn't it? Then they went out dancing to a gay bar where she could really be free. We know a lot about her Miami life, don't we, from her brother's book? Yeah.
Dennis Rodman actually says as soon as they went in that gay bar, people were so used to seeing her that they just got left alone.
She's just dancing all night.
Yeah.
But he thought it was just going to be a fling. He couldn't understand that. She was like, no, firstly, I want your baby. So she was at least open about it. Yeah. But he said what blew his mind was there's nothing he had that she wanted, so she couldn't have been after him for his money or fame or anything because she already had all of it. So that was really liberating.
And he said there was a point. Is he with the San Antonio Spurs now?
Yes.
They were playing Utah Jazz out of this tiny little town, and Madonna flew out to watch him play. And that was where it clicked in his brain. It's like she's so busy and she's in Los Angeles. The fact that she's flown out to the middle of nowhere to watch me play basketball in this tiny town must mean
this is
that
a relationship.
I mean something to her.
And this whole time he had a girlfriend that he lived with.
Oh my God, I know. He said at the end of this lovely chapter about Madonna, he goes, I should come clean. I actually did have a girlfriend at the time.
And so he only broke that up about halfway through his time with Madonna. Because I guess he just didn't believe it was real. Plus, he's obviously not faithful. He's never said he was. He's got many seeds to sow.
But then after the Madonna thing fizzled out, because he actually said she had done her wild part of her life and she wanted to settle down and have a kid. And Dennis Rodman kind of thought, I actually haven't done my wild time yet. I'm not ready to settle down.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons, wasn't there? One of them was, the circus that was created by her, a bit like Beckham and Victoria, is that it really upset the NBA.
Yeah.
They really, really did not like that. They thought it was distracting him. He said it never, ever distracted his game at all. But the biggest reason, it seems to be, is that his pride just couldn't take being Mr. Madonna.
It's fair enough.
It is fair enough.
But it's a shame.
Yeah, it's a shame he couldn't handle it. And when they met up to definitely check that it wasn't going to happen.
Yes, but you know how they met up. Dennis Rodman was back with Kim, his girlfriend. They went to Las Vegas for the weekend. Madonna found out he was in Las Vegas. She flew there. She found out the hotel. She found out what room he was in. And she booked out the room next door. And she sent a message down to the casino to say, hey, this is Madonna. I'm in the room next door. And he went up there, left his girlfriend in the casino. Yeah. Him and Madonna had this conversation. She said, look, I really want to make a go of it with you.
She said, you
come
love
with me.
You should leave her.
You love me. You should leave her. Come with me now. And they both fucked off and left Kim.
No.
I mean, that's dreadful.
It's not brilliant, is it? No.
But I've heard before, actually, that when Madonna wants a man, she will go all out to get him. And she did. And they tried it again, but ultimately it just wasn't.
Ultimately, no. And he said she wasn't mad or anything. She was just sad. She said, I'm just sad. I would have made it work. I would have brought my life to you. You know, I'd have come and lived in your house. I'd have done whatever it takes to make you feel comfortable, but ultimately just couldn't handle it.
She does say she was very honest because she wanted a child so badly at this stage that she says she wanted a prime physical specimen. Yeah. Because, of course, she's a prime physical specimen. So she wanted another one to make the perfect baby. And actually what happened after Dennis Rodman is that
the trainer, the Cuban.
Yeah, it was Carlos Leon.
Yeah.
And she got him to impregnate her, which resulted in Lourdes.
He stayed in her life, but they were never really together.
Yeah. What's even more curious is that she's after prime physical specimens to father her children, and then she went with Guy Ritchie.
That is weird. That is so weird. But the other thing isn't just the physical with Dennis Rodman. I think she really saw a kindred spirit.
Yeah, I do.
You know, rebel and a bit bisexual, possibly. You know, he says he's bisexual in his mind, incidentally. He does talk about that, which is actually, again, incredible. He says, I fantasise about being with men. I've never followed it through, and I may never. But in my mind, I'm bisexual.
I am amazed. In a sportsman's biography in 1996, he is being this open about such things. Yeah. It's incredible, actually.
It is. So I really do think he was a kindred spirit. I really think, actually, it would have been an amazing match. It could have been real love, and I very much doubt he's found as good since.
Well, he married Carmen Electra for, 9 days?
Yeah.
So,
That's weird.
He hasn't found true love
No,
since.
I know nothing about her personality, so I can't judge that at all.
I think she seems all right.
Well, yeah. I mean, Prince thought so.
Okay.
He named her.
He named her?
Yes.
What was her name before?
I don't know, Marjorie Smith.
She certainly got a better name out of that, didn't she? Carmen Electra.
It's a great name.
So where are we?
The Spurs sold him on to the Chicago Bulls, which is really the ultimate. He was in many clubs after that, but none were as legendary as his time with the Bulls, which is about 93 to 96. Well, he's in the Bulls when he's
in the Bulls when he writes this.
Yeah. They sold him because they thought he was a bit of a wild card. They'd read that article about him being bisexual. He made them all nervous, I think.
Yeah, I think he says that they kind of traded him for this really mediocre player, which seemed absurd, and that just told him how much they wanted to get rid of him. And so the Chicago Bulls took him.
Yes.
And that's when he's playing with Michael Jordan and stuff now, right?
Yeah. When they sold him on, because they said things like he's late for practice. He said he was only late once, but he'd never be early. When the Spurs sold him on, they did an interview with the manager, and he said, everyone's going to show up on time now. Everyone's going to be responsible. And he said, oh, that's just fucking perfect. If you're running a Boy Scout camp. Oh, yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
Why do you want it to be so careful and so preciously perfect? He has the game. He's exciting. And he puts 100% into it. And yeah, they didn't like sometimes he was a bit rough, but he never broke the rules with that. I mean, if he very rarely did, they just penalise him.
But that's another thing. He would say that those golden boy basketball players would often stick their elbows and their hips
and
out.
They got away with it.
Never brought up on it. But the minute he started doing it, he would get fined and
exactly.
cautioned and stuff.
Yeah.
Or whatever they do in basketball. Do they get a red card? No.
I don't know.
They have to go and sit on the bench and think about it.
Think about what they've done wrong.
Yes.
Let's talk for 1 minute about the Bulls. Right? Michael Jordan had come back from retirement when he was there. Scottie Pippen is legendary. Oh, man. There's a Netflix documentary on Michael Jordan.
Is there?
I think it's in about 3 or 4 parts. And you think, that's a bit much. You watch it, you don't want to stop watching it. It's epic. Talk about that fighting spirit. It's so great. Anyway, they were absolute legends of the game, and they had to approve his appointment to the Bulls, and they did, because they just saw, although he's wild, because they could easily have not wanted him in the team, they saw what he would bring to it. And when the 3 of them were together, it was totally magic. He said, it's much better to play with Michael Jordan than against him. At one point he says something like, just thinking about playing against Michael Jordan is exhausting. Because he was, he's obviously the best of the best. So those 3 were absolute, because Michael Jordan for scoring, Dennis Rodman for rebounding, obviously. I don't know what Scottie Pippen did, but it's obviously very important. But he says, they didn't try to tame me. He says at one point, early in being in the Bulls, he got angry and he threw the ball at the clock. And actually hit the clock. And obviously that was a expression of anger and frustration. And he looked to the coach, I think he's called Phil Jackson, he's a bit of a legend, right? And he looked at him imagining he's going to get told off, reprimanded, whatever, because that's what he's had his whole life in basketball. He's the bad one. And he looked over at Phil Jackson and he's laughing. He just thinks it's funny and he goes, oh my God, they get it. They get that I'm just a sports person and everything's about the game. Finally, I'm understood. They're not trying to rein him in. They actually love him. And then he can really excel. And that's why he did with the Bulls.
Yeah, it's amazing that came so far into his career that he couldn't be accepted professionally until his 3rd major team. Yeah. Well, they know his worth at that point, don't they?
They know his worth.
And he brought so many more people to basketball because he crossed over, he transcended basketball, became this interesting character in popular culture, and that drew more people in.
Yeah.
In fact, I think he said that basketball is like a whorehouse and everyone's a prostitute, but he said he's the high class one that goes out and pulls everyone in, but all the other girls get paid more money.
Damn.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I hope he's getting paid all right now. He must be. I don't know what he got paid at the Chicago Bulls, but I can't imagine at that point.
I hope it was decent.
Yeah, it would have been.
So yeah, little post-it. He carried on playing a lot of games with a lot of different clubs after he was he's getting older, obviously.
He came to Brighton in England to play part of their team. I didn't know Brighton had a basketball team.
I mean, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and he did wrestling.
Yeah, he did wrestling.
How can you be a wrestler when you're that tall?
I know.
I thought you had to be quite short and stocky to be a wrestler.
I've no clue. It's weird just thinking about it. But yeah, he was so clean living all this time and sort of anti everyone who went off the rails. And then sadly, it seems like he has gone off the rails. He's a massive alcoholic now, which is really sad. I don't like to know that he's fallen on hard times. Even if he's still well paid, it seems like he's really gone off the rails.
Yeah.
He does make the news. He's still making the news. He actually says in this book, when I leave basketball, I'm just going to disappear. And he certainly hasn't.
Yeah.
He's making big news all the time.
It's because we're still interested in him. That's why. He's only not disappeared because he's still being reported on, because he's an interesting person, you know?
That's true. He is a person of interest. In this book, he is about 35 when he's writing it. He says, I'm already old for where I come from.
Right.
It's just not a long lifespan. And that's why you don't want to see him go under.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sad that he has.
Yeah, I'm sad he has as well. But top sportsmen, we rarely hear about them after they've gone into retirement, unless they turn up as like a pundit on the BBC talking about the sport.
Yeah.
All of them can't do that.
You're right. A lot of them do fall on the wayside because you put 100%, 200% of yourself into something and then it's taken away from you
at a
by
young
your
age.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the things he talks about, earning a lot of money. Well, your earning window's probably only about 10 years, and then you don't really make anything. No. I talked about Gaza earlier.
Yeah.
Look what happened to him. He just became an alcoholic himself, and he's a mess. I hate that. He was a national hero.
I know. And
now he's a mess, and it looks like Dennis Rodman could also be
it's gone the same way.
But I still liked him.
I'm really glad you've come round to liking the man.
I did not like him. What are you talking about?
Oh, I'm really glad you found out about Dennis Rodman.
I was surprised because he just looks so severe and fierce. He's a bit like a Mel Grace Jones in a way.
It's armour. It's armour for both people. I think both people are lovely and quite vulnerable.
After reading her book and finding out how sensitive and funny and vulnerable she is, I feel the same thing about Dennis Rodman, actually. He's a good man.
He is, isn't he?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Thrift Shop Biography. We love making this podcast and we're absolutely thrilled that so many of you are already listening. You could really help us out by leaving us a review somewhere, wherever you listen to this podcast. And if you could share us, tell your friends about us, or drop some links on social media. We have a Facebook page called Thrift Shop Biography, so make sure you come over there to hear about the episodes first and what else we're up to. Okay, see you next week. And if you're new here, there are loads more episodes now to go and listen in the back catalogue, so make sure you go and enjoy them. Okay, thank you very much.